The play-in dream is dead for the Bulls and the Kings. Which franchise is more in need of a total rebuild? Which playoff series are destined for a 4-0 sweep? And which will go all the way? Anthony Edwards plays it safe. Giannis crashes through walls. And can the refs just please stay out of the way? That's all today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free. We are available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets, and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts. And with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior NBA writer for the Action Network. He's our man of 1,000 podcasts. It's Matt Moore. Matt, the Kings and GM Monte McNair have agreed to mutually part ways, and one of the Kings' rumored targets to replace McNair is former Nuggets GM Calvin Booth, who was fired after his relationship soured with Mike Malone, who used to coach the Kings. If the Kings are Bulls West because of their roster, what does that make the Nuggets?
Oh, man, if the Kings are Bulls West, the Nuggets are Knicks West. That's who they are. All offense, no defense, should be in a higher tier and are not. That would be who the Nuggets are currently.
And from the Locked On Kings East podcast, the Locked On Bulls podcast, the Prince of Petty, it's Haize. Haize, I'm sorry, and we're here for you.
I was prepared for this. I was born in the darkness. I was prepared for this.
I was molded by Jerry Reinsdorf.
All right, the Mavs and the Heat, they stave off elimination in last night's play-in. We're going to talk about them more tomorrow when we preview the final play, or when we recap, I should say, preview the final play-in contest. That's what I mean. So let's go first to the Sacramento Kings, who have mutually agreed to part ways with Monte McNair. I want to go to Locked On. Yeah, exactly. In big quotation marks. Let's go to Locked On Kings for the reaction.
Sure. With this organization right now, Monte wears a lot of the blame for that. But here's what Monte doesn't wear the blame for. Here's where ownership needs to look themselves in the freaking mirror. They allowed a GM on his last leg to trade away De'Aaron Fox, to trade away their franchise player in a desperate attempt to keep his job by fulfilling a short-sighted demand or mandate of making the playoffs by any means necessary. You have no general manager. You have no head coach. We'll talk about Doug Christie more in a second. You have no star. You have a bunch of number two guys. You likely won't have your first round pick. And you've got $115 million tied up in three guys: DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, and Zach LaVine. Complete disaster for this Kings organization.
Okay, Matt, which of these teams, Bulls, Kings, should run fastest into a rebuild?
Oh, I think the Bulls kind of are rebuilding, right? Like they moved on from Zach LaVine. They did recommit to Lonzo. Vooch is likely gone this summer. I think that they've already kind of committed to a rebuild, so I don't think you can really kind of blame them for that. Maybe try and move Patrick Williams if you can move that contract. But in general, like I think that they're already kind of there. I don't want to see the Kings go back into a rebuild. It took them 20 years to get back in the playoffs. It took them 20 years. I don't want to see them go through that again. So to me, this is more about what they do need is an aggressive retooling. Like you flip out everything. Like you move on from Sabonis, you move on from LaVine, you move on from DeRozan. You get an entire new cast of like those medium level players. Try and hit on somebody that you think is like a star that could be. Go in that direction. And that, to me, is the best way to go about this, is to try and aim in that kind of pathway as opposed to trying a straight rebuild.
Haize, do you agree with Matt that the Bulls are already rebuilding? Would, extending Giddey, would bringing back Kobe White, would that be a rebuild technically, or are they committing to some play-in future?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have already started the rebuild. I mean, when the average age of your roster drops by almost 4 years in one offseason, and you get rid of your 2 leading scorers, I think they have committed to rebuild. They've gotten all their first round picks back. They have cap flexibility going forward. So yeah, I think they've committed to a rebuild. I think that they have some of the same pieces that are overlapping. Giddey's going to stay here. You just traded for him. He's 22 years old. Kobe, we'll see what happens with Kobe. I do think there's a world in which they could possibly move on from Kobe. He's an expiring contract on really good value, and teams may come calling for that. But even if they do re-sign Kobe, like, they have plenty of cap flexibility to where if they do that, this is your time to see what guys can really turn into. So I think the Bulls are committed to a pseudo rebuild, a major retooling, whatever you want to call it. The Kings, though, they have to rebuild. It's time to just rebuild everything there.
All right, we know the matchups in all but 2 series now, so let's get to work on some playoff previewing. Which series have sweep written all over them, and which will go the distance? So let's hear first from Ben Beacon of Locked On Wolves on a special crossover edition with the Locked On Lakers podcast on what troubles him about a matchup against the Lakers and why he actually picked OKC as a more favorable matchup.
Luka is the reason. And Jack kept saying, look, Luka and LeBron are 2 of the smartest, most intelligent, and obviously good players that we've had in this generation. You don't want to play those guys both on the same team in a playoff series. And that is, like, to sum it up, that's the reason why. There's, of course, Luka PTSD from the conference finals last year. The other thing that I would say about this series is the Lakers, like, off the top, I think it's very likely the Lakers have 3 of the best 4 players in the series. And that matters in a playoff series, and the best player in the series in Luka. But on the flip side, the Wolves probably have 7 of the best 11, and I'm sure we could quibble about this a little bit, 7 of the best 12 maybe, but it's a playoff series. So in the first round with more off days, so does the depth matter as much? All that to say, the matchup is a little bit scary for Minnesota.
All right, Haize, what do you think? Is Lakers-Wolves giving you Luka Broom vibes, or maybe another series? Which of these series that you look at right now most likely to end in a 4-0 sweep?
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not the Luka series. I don't think that's going to end in the sweep. If I had to pick any series to end in the sweep here, I don't really see very many sweeps at all. The question is, though, more likely. Let's see. I will say, get it, Pistons-Knicks. That's the one that's going to end it. That I'll say is the most likely.
Yeah, who sweeps who?
The Pistons will sweep the Knicks. There you go.
Whoa!
I'm stamping it. I'm stamping it.
Wow. Man, Haize coming in strong on a Thursday. I think Clippers Nuggets has the potential for it. So one of the things to keep in mind with these series, first round series typically goes shorter than we think. We're always like, they could really give them some trouble. It's going to be a battle. And then it's like, no, it wasn't a battle. It was just like there was three blowouts and one close game that the team that lost couldn't figure it out because they were at such a disadvantage. Clippers Nuggets is what I kind of consider to be a tilt series. If the Clippers just find that Clippers show up and they're the team that they've been for 2 months, if March basketball wasn't the useless wasteland that Haize and I said it was, and Doug was kind of like, really? Then the Clippers could legitimately just be like so much better than Denver that this is over quickly. If they are able to just shut down everybody else and make Nikola Jokic a scorer and they're hitting threes, this can be over very quickly. If Denver, on the other hand, is able to just outpace them and they have so much more firepower and it's typical playoff Harden and Kawhi is good but not elite, and Norman Powell shoots like he has been over the last couple of months, the Nuggets might just have more firepower. These tactical advantages sometimes can just edge these series all the way over and tip the scales to where it goes in one direction or the other. The easy one here seems to be Thunder versus whoever comes out of the 8. But if it's Mavericks, I'm not willing to go there. So we'll come back to that tomorrow and Monday, depending on what happens.
The Cavs also have been dominant this season. We'll see who their matchup is pretty soon. Probably Heat, right? Heat Hawks. You got Heat? Anyone got
I think Heat. The only thing here is that this reeks of the type of thing where a team has such an awesome regular season and then they walk into a playoff series and they haven't played meaningful basketball in weeks. And all of a sudden you look, especially if it's the Heat, and you look up and you're like, is this 95-94 Miami with 8:20 to go? Like, what is happening? This reeks of that situation coming around the bend for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I want to talk more about that Nuggets Clippers series later in the show. Also, Pacers Bucks. I mean, if you want to talk about first round series that have potential like existential problems for one team, Giannis, can the Pacers solve Giannis Antetokounmpo? I'll ask Matt and Haize that coming up as well. But I just want a quick shout out. If you want to get swept by the Lakers, I think one of the things that you would do theoretically, if you wanted that, is to make LeBron angry and just give him a reason to be motivated. Well, shout out Anthony Edwards, who did not do that when asked about playing LeBron in the playoffs. He refused to step on a landmine. He said, quote, "It means a lot to match up against him. Probably goes down as the greatest player to ever play basketball. Trying to get putting him out of the playoffs under my belt is going to be a tough one, but it's going to be a fun road." Haize, he didn't take the bait.
Smart not to take the bait. Now, I would have liked a little bit more of a petty response to this, but, you know, I'll appreciate him not taking the bait.
I know you would have, but Matt, that's a smart answer.
It is, but I'll also say this, like, if I'm LeBron, I'm like, all I am is another notch on your belt, so to speak. Are you serious? That's what, oh, I'm just another guy you got to go through? All right, kiddo, let's see how this goes. So,
I'm probably the best player of all time. Yeah, the great ones always find a way to read between the lines and find the middle finger. There's no doubt about it. All right, coming up, I just mentioned a few series that we're going to talk about. Also, I want to get Matt and Haize's read on if they're optimistic or pessimistic about what's going on in Dallas. Got some news about Kyrie Irving, about the officiating. They weren't very good in that Golden State Grizzlies game. Can the officiating stay out of the news? I'll find out from Matt and Haize coming up. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Skims. Skims, it's the brand known for redefining comfort. They're now making underwear for men. And if you've heard the hype, let me just tell you, it's real. Whether you prefer boxer briefs, classic briefs, or something in between, Skims has created a men's line built for comfort, performance, and everyday wear. You're going to get ultra soft, breathable materials that move with you and keep their shape all day. No riding up, no bunching, no sagging. Whether you're working out, traveling, or just lounging around, Skims men's underwear is designed to feel like a second skin. Lightweight, supportive, seriously comfortable. If you're on team briefs, you should try the Skims Boxer Brief. They are perfect for an active lifestyle. They're going to move with you. They never lose their shape, and they stay in place all day. Whether you're working out or just running errands, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear you will ever own. Plus, that lightweight material, it feels amazing, almost like you're wearing nothing at all. Shop Skims Men at skims.com/LockedOnNBA or in Skims stores. And after you check out, be sure to select podcast in the survey and choose our show in the drop-down. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Game Time. There's nothing like watching basketball live, playoff basketball live, doubly so. The energy of the crowd, the sound of sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out all the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. No more endless searching. Game Time Picks highlights the best seats at the best prices so you can get straight to the fun without worrying about overpaying. Plus, with seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. We talked about which series is most likely to end in a sweep just a second ago. How about the flip side? Which of these series do you think has the most potential to give us 7 games, Matt?
Ooh, these are tough in the first round. I actually think Pistons-Knicks. I'll go the exact opposite way from Haize.
Wow.
I think Pistons-Knicks has the best potential to go long. New York's offense, I still give the advantage to in this series. But like if this is game 6 in Detroit and Detroit is down 3-2, I'm going to like Detroit a lot in that game. Detroit's tough, man. And that crowd is going to be so amped with it being the first game, the first playoff series in that building, I think, since they opened it. Like, have they had a playoff series since Little Caesars? On top of that, I think the other one probably in the Western Conference, I will say, I'm kind of leaning towards Lakers Wolves going long. I was real confident in the Lakers early. The more I've dug into this, Wolves have a lot of things that they can do here. I'm going to be very interested to see how JJ Redick coaches this series, because that's going to determine, I think, a lot of how long and which way Lakers Wolves goes.
I got Nuggets Clippers here as a team as one that could potentially go 7 games. I think depending on which Nuggets team shows up, but the Clippers, they're so good, but I think that could go 7 games. But the one I'm really banking on, the Rockets-Warriors, I think that's going to go full 7 games. I think that's going to be a back and forth. It's going to be a matchup of coaches, the X's and O's part of it, the wily vets versus the young up and comers. I think that's going to be a series that goes the distance.
And you would think that would probably hurt the Warriors if it does. I mean, I guess it probably hurts any team that goes 7 games. It's going to, tire you out a little bit more than maybe some teams that get by quicker. But the Warriors, I mean, being older, you would think that would hurt them most.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say here is this is more of a broad thing for the playoffs. You need your team to stay out of game 7s. Don't feel like, well, at worst, they can get a game 7 and then move on. Teams in that next round after going 7 games, the record is horrendous. Now, there's 2 ways of thinking about that. One is they're exhausted. A game 7 takes it out of you. There's not recovery time, and it beats you up. The other is that if you go 7 games with an opponent, you're not clearly better than them, which means it was a coin flip, which means you're probably not better than the team that you're going to face in the next round. So not only do you need to root for your team to win the series, you need to root for them to win in 5 or 6. Going 7 is never good for anybody.
By the way, the first playoff series in Little Caesars Arena was 18-19, a 4-0 loss to the Bucks. So this will be the second Little Caesars playoff series.
I thought you were saying 18-19 is in the year, and I was like, God, the NBA goes back further than I thought. Little Caesars was actually Cesar Romero or something.
All right, let's talk about Bucks-Pacers. They're going to leave off a 4-game slate of first-round games on Saturday. Pacers have home court if they can defend it from a very motivated Giannis Antetokounmpo. Here's Locked On Bucks and Locked On Pacers with more.
Giannis is averaging like 37 points a game against the Pacers over the last 2 years, and his ability to get downhill, his playmaking, and how he's been playing the last few weeks to end the season, getting that rhythm of being the primary playmaker, I think is going to show up big for the Bucks.
Yeah, Giannis is just terrifying. I mean, and they had this like wall thing they did last year and sometimes this year. That's one guy on him, 2 guys just to the side, like make him pass. And I remember being in Indy in the game, he talked about like, we got to think about this loss and we're getting freaky, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And that was the game where he said, yeah, I've seen that coverage before, but like I'm naturally pass first, so I give it up. And at the time I thought, I don't think of Giannis as pass first, but that's interesting. And then this year he's like, oh yeah, he totally is. Like he just carves up that coverage and his passing's been better with better play finishers. And so I think not only is Giannis capable of going for, name your number, 30, 35, 40, whatever, against like literally any defender in the NBA, but if he's better against those kinds of coverages, the Bigs are going to have to get really creative.
Haize, if the Pacers win this series, will it be because they figured out some kind of way to deal with Giannis or because they focused on some other difference maker?
I think if the Pacers win this series, it's going to be because their offense is so amazing in it that they just overwhelm the Milwaukee Bucks defense. I don't know if I could say that they zero in on any one player and stop it on the Milwaukee Bucks, but I think it's just that they just overwhelm the Bucks with their ability to score. Tyrese Halliburton has a great series, and their offense just has a greater impact than the Milwaukee Bucks defense, which has been really good here in the second half of the season. But I don't trust the Indiana Pacers defense to stop anybody. So I don't think they're stopping not stopping Jack.
They've been better defensively this year. Like that's one of the sneaky things about them is like they're actually not that they're not that bad defensively, and that's like a big step up for them. But if you kind of break it down, so like they're 16th in half court defense. They're pretty good when they're able to set. Problem is they're 22nd transition defense. You know who you don't want to be bad against transition against? Giannis Antetokounmpo coming down the tracks at you. So I do think though if the Pacers let live with Giannis getting his, and they're able to limit the 3-point attempts for the Bucks, that puts this into a math game, and they'll be able to probably succeed there. I'm worried about the Pacers bench, which hasn't been as good this season as it was last year. And the Bucks kind of surprisingly have some dudes that are quietly good, but the Pacers need to win this. We think about this in terms of players a lot of time, and I've started thinking about things in terms of lineups. And okay, this lineup can win this stretch. This lineup can win this stretch. The Pacers' focus has to be on winning across the 48 minutes with their different 5-man lineups versus trying to win the Giannis minutes. You need to be like across the stretch of games of a game. That's how you win. If they can limit the 3-pointers and make this a 2-point battle, the Pacers have enough firepower to get past the Bucks.
Is Giannis the star player with the easiest matchup? Just like team versus player, does he look on the other side of the roster and go, yeah, I can figure this out? Or is it, I mean, we don't know who SGA is going to play against, but you would think the Mavs might give OKC a little bit of trouble. I don't know what they really have for SGA individually, but which star player jumps out at you as like, all right, this is a great playoff matchup for them, Matt?
Ooh, I watched some film this morning on Wolves. I think Anthony Edwards is actually going to cook here pretty bad. So they switched a lot with Rui and then brought doubles, and Ant just got whatever he wanted. So versus the Mavericks last year, they have, I think, a little bit better defenders to throw, or they don't have as many defenders to throw at Ant. So I actually think Ant's going to have a pretty huge series here in this first round.
Haize?
I know we don't know their exact opponent yet, and this may be bold of me to say because I don't think this changes no matter who they're playing against. But Donovan Mitchell, he's going to have the easiest go of anyone because I don't think the Atlanta Hawks or the Miami Heat really can do much with Donovan Mitchell personally. If they didn't have the bigs that they had, Miami Heat probably could do something out with them with having Bam. Like even they rotated Bam out on Josh Giddey, but you're not going to be able to do that with Evan Mobley and Jaren Allen there. So I would say that Donovan Mitchell's probably going to have one of the easiest goes.
Matt, you seemed...
Yeah, I'll say this. I don't love switch coverage versus Spida. Like he does very well when he's coming off of picks and getting into space. I love him versus drop coverage. He murders. I like him versus at level coverage. He's a really great passer in those sequences. I worry about him if they're able to switch with Bam, and he hasn't played as much in the rotation recently. But Davion Mitchell off night, I think, can actually disrupt him. I think that's a series where I would look to Darius Garland and particularly Evan Mobley as being the difference makers there. But you might be right that Mitchell just might wind up having like, hey, instead of 50 points, he averages 13 assists. That wouldn't shock me either versus the Heat defense because they don't have the kind of disrupting defense on the back line off ball that they did when they had Butler.
I'll throw one more in there that we've already talked about on the show, and that's if you're ready to give Cade Cunningham the star label, then his matchup versus Jalen Brunson is going to be, even the Locked On Knicks podcast has admitted that's going to be difficult for them to really figure out. Let us know what you think on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. Which star player has the easiest matchup? Maybe tomorrow we'll talk about which star player has the toughest matchup. But coming up next on Locked On NBA, I want to go to a series that I think is flying a little too far under the radar. Clippers against the Nuggets. What's the difference in the Los Angeles Clippers in the post-Paul George era versus the pre-Paul George era? We'll get the answer from Locked On Clippers on the other side. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? With the Fire TV Stick 4K, you can play top Xbox titles, no console required. Just grab your controller, sign in to your Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription, and dive into games like EA Sports, College Football 25, and Call of Duty Black Ops 6. It's gaming made simple. With Wi-Fi 6 support and auto low latency mode, gameplay is smooth and it's responsive, perfect for competitive players. And if you're always on the go, Fire TV Stick 4K is way more portable than dragging your console around so that you can game or stream wherever you are. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. That's Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started today. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select Fire TV devices. Turn your TV into a gaming hub with Fire TV today. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every single day. Let's take a look at a series that I think is flying so far under the radar that it's about to catch a power line. It's Nuggets versus the Clippers. The Clippers have been playing elite defense all season long, and things seem to really start to click when Kawhi Leonard returned healthy, and he stayed healthy. Here's Locked On Clippers host Darian Vaziri on the biggest difference between the Paul George Clippers and the post-Paul Clippers.
Extremely different in the sense that the Clippers have approached this season far more seriously than the seasons with Paul George, and that starts with having defensive personnel and guys that are going to go out there and set a tone defensively. Chris Dunn, Derek Jones Jr. have been those guys. You know, Nicholas Batum has helped a little bit, but he's had his minutes limited a bit more throughout the season, just kind of, I think, saving him for the playoffs because remember, he's older and he played in the Olympics. This defensive identity of this team is strong. They go out there and compete every single night. We couldn't satisfy PG, and it seemed like we couldn't satisfy the pairing of Kawhi and PG, but now it feels like the pecking order is very clear. It's Kawhi Leonard as the guy, James Harden controlling the game the most, being our pick and roll guy, but our second option, then Zubac, and then Norman Powell, and they all play a distinctively different way. So it's really two real stars, a third guy in Zoo who you can argue is a star, and then Norm and great role players.
Haize, how surprised have you been that the Clippers have been able to make the pivot out of the Paul George era and into what they've become this season?
I mean, a little surprised. I think that when you have James Harden playing at the level that he's been playing this season, even though he hasn't always shot the best efficiencies, like you're halfway there. Norman Powell stepping up the way he had over the large part of this season. Everybody that just stepped up and played their roles excellently well. Chris Dunn's having what should be having him in some type of contention for Defensive Player of the Year award type season. Like everything just fits with this Clippers team. I think that's what makes them special. And then when you have Kawhi Leonard healthy and playing, and with the way that him and James Harden's chemistry has worked out this season, that's what takes them even further over the top. So I'm not as surprised maybe by some because the pieces of the roster all kind of make sense together on paper. But they've just been – I'm more amazed as well that Kawhi Leonard stayed relatively healthy this season, is healthy right now for the playoffs.
And time. That is the longest stretch of time Haize has ever said positive things about the Clippers consecutively. I got to take the L here. So I thought losing PG was going to kill them. I'm a PG guy. Like I like Paul George a lot as a player. I think his approach to the game is the right way. I think he's been an excellent player in this league for a decade and a half. They've been better without him. I just got to take the L on it. Now, I'm skeptical about their long-term stuff. This feels like a season when everything went right for them. In particular, I think because the expectations were lower. I think so much of this is like they did not have huge expectations and there wasn't that burden that was kind of weighing on them. And now it's like all gravy because no one really expected much of them. Their win total was like in the 30s, high 30s. They weren't expected to be this good, but they have been. And it's a credit to like Kawhi Leonard's gotten his body right. Harden did a great job of holding him up. Powell was phenomenal the first half of the season and Zoo's had a career year. Do I think this carries forward in the future? No, I do not. I think this is a year when everything came together for them, but it did. And like, I can't deny it. They've had a better system, whether it makes sense to me or not. Their leadership structure has worked this year. And that's a credit to Ty Lue and what James Harden has given them.
What's a bigger factor in this series? Zubac staying out of foul trouble versus Nikola Jokic, or which shooting guard has the most heaters between James Harden and Jamal Murray?
I'm going to say there's a third one, which is Nikola Jokic's 3-point percentage. Mm-hmm. He averaged the third most 3-point attempts per game of any opponent versus the Clippers this season. Going back and watching, his whole thing is if I can pull Ivica Zubac out of the paint and up, my back cutters can get action off of screens and slip inside, and now we're cooking. We're able to get past their defense. If you let Zeus sit back and you let the Clippers clog that paint, they're going to do that, and it's going to cut off all the oxygen to the Nuggets offense. And now this is a defensive battle, and spoiler alert, the Nuggets are going to lose. So Jokic has to be able to hit from range to force Zoo up. Then he can pump fake, drive around him, and get fouls, or they can use the back cuts in order to be able to slice up guys like James Harden and Norman Powell. Christian Brown, I think, is going to have a monster series if Nikola Jokic can hit his threes.
Haize?
I'll say Zubac staying out of foul trouble. I think that you need Zubac in there for all the Jokic minutes possible to be out there because you really don't have much behind him other than that. I know Ben Simmons is there, but I'm not trusting Ben Simmons. So I'd say the Zubac the part of that is the most important thing.
All right, rapid fire time as we close the show out today. I have a few news items and I want to know if Matt and Haize are optimistic or pessimistic about them. The 2-minute report from the Warriors-Grizzlies play-in matchup revealed 4 incorrect calls down the stretch. Haize, are you optimistic or pessimistic that officiating will stay out of the conversation and that we can focus on basketball in round 1 of these playoffs?
Is there anything other than like what's lower than pessimistic? Because no, it's
apocalyptic. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, apocalyptic. Yeah, maybe it could be a little bit like that. Yeah, the officiating is always going to be part of the story in the playoffs.
You have Luka Doncic on the Los Angeles Lakers. Yeah, we're going to have conversations about the officiating this offseason, postseason. I think also another thing to kind of keep in mind is the game is just really difficult to be officiated right now. And we're seeing a lot of these calls late in games that decide games. And that, to me, that's the most worrisome thing. These games need to be decided by the players and not by officiating.
Luka just has to make it very clear who he is talking to, right? Just I'm talking to fans now, or I'm talking to officials. Maybe he needs to carry a little sign in his pocket that just indicates to the referee, I am talking to fans right now. Shams reports that Kyrie Irving could be back in the Mavericks lineup as soon as January, and that the Mavericks are working to sign him, or at least have a desire to sign him, to a 3-year extension to align his timeline with Anthony Davis's timeline. After the play-in win and now this news, are you optimistic or pessimistic on the Mavs' ability to somehow figure out this situation post-Luka, Matt?
I mean, what's worse than pessimistic?
Apocalyptic.
Yeah, it's apocalyptic. Kyrie's not going to be back until, even if he gets back in January, great. You're going to have to show me. The age, injuries, miles in this guy and his approach to things does not lead me to believe that he's going to be hustling back. I don't know what they're going to do this summer. They might add Kevin Durant, and if they do that, then it's that's only a lot of talent. Has that gone well for anybody in the last two, since the Warriors? NAD with the injury issue. How is this? What sucks is what we know this is going to go badly, and Mavs fans are just going to have to watch it happen while hating all of it. There is no fan base that I feel worse for right now than the Dallas Mavericks, and I do a show every day with a Hornets fan.
Yeah.
And a Bulls
All right,
fan.
I'm gonna let that slide because I want to ask Haize this: if you're a Mavericks fan, 99% of Mavericks fans were not in favor of the Luka move, and they've been very hard on Nico Harrison, obviously. If you're a Mavericks fan, wouldn't you rather the Mavericks dip out of this play-in than make it a series with Oklahoma City? Because then that would sort of confirm, at least in the minds of the general management of the Dallas Mavericks, confirm that they're on the right path.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm a Mavericks fan, I'm not hoping that they make it far in the playoffs because I want this thing to crash and burn. So hopefully as many people can get fired as humanly possible. That's where I'm at. Go completely scorched earth on everything. So, and with Nico Harrison running thing, if they win one game against the OKC Thunder, I fully believe he'll make it be that he made the right decision, and they're right there. They're right there.
I think I'll say I don't think it's likely, but I think both of you are maybe too heavily discounting the idea that sometimes good things happen to bad people, and good things happen to bad decision makers. I should say, not bad people, but bad decision makers, and that. In
unrelated news, Kevin Porter Jr. will be starring for the Milwaukee Bucks this weekend.
All right. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube. And you can leave your comments there, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Thank you to Matt and Haize for their expertise. And we be kind to each other, and we're going to see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On NBA to preview the rest of the play-in and to get you ready for these playoff series this weekend.